Ora, muito bom dia a todas e a todos.
Good morning and welcome to Fundão and to event for the launching of the Pink Circle Cities Network Sustainable Female Entrepreneurship. The Mayor of Fundão, Mr. Paulo Fernandes, will take the floor to welcome you and start the session. Good morning. Good morning. It's a huge pleasure to welcome this event today for many reasons, but first, allow me to greet the Secretary of State for the Environment. You being here shows how relevant it is for the government of the civil society, how it will be organized, and how relevant it is in terms of the challenges, civilizational challenges, I would say, that we have ahead. There's a lot of stages to it. There's a multilateral one that, as we know, it's not that healthy. We're aware of what's happening in the world, tensions, the world divide, a typical fracture north and south from the point of view of development in more democratic manners, in understanding the development of the world. It's a huge tension that we have in the world, which is not helpful in terms of taking the right steps that the SDGs that we have here, these cubes, could help so that we could follow a greater path. Then we have the internal scale. Within the regional space, Europe, for example, it is where we are in full and where obviously we have important issues, Green Deal, and a corridor of opportunities, but also a corridor which gives us some responsibility in terms of a greater set of goals and in a perspective of intervention, action plan, approaches that we are all called into action, and then the local scale where countries in their partnerships between the central administration and local administration do have a relevance. And if we wish to get at the end of the day this entire procedure, it is the scale where it will have its greatest effect of transformation. If we get this locally, thus involving citizens, we will be winners. If we just use the global side of it without the input of the citizen, or if it stays in an intermediate position, no man's land, if you will, in the almost administration of procedures, kind of just waiting, we will surely not be winning this challenge. So, Mr. Secretary of State, huge pleasure to see you here. And in this room, we have many of those views. Allow me to greet all experts, all entities from different origins. Many of them will share their knowledge with us in different perspectives. And the organizational structure of this event, which is the engine. Susanna, for example, allow me to congratulate them for their ability to understand that without this multifunctionality, if you will, of everything that is hereby represented, administration and etc., civil society, properly organized NGO structures coming from the entrepreneurship world and the corporate world, all this approach that we've gathered here in this movement that I had the opportunity when we had the Smart Cities event 2 years ago. I had the opportunity to be a signatory. I was the first one, actually. I didn't even know I was the first one. First city, okay, fine. I didn't know it was the first city, but I was extremely satisfied to assess this movement, which now was built and positioned in a way that is more structured, building its plan of intervention, harnessing more will into the process, into the procedure. It is a movement that might be quite helpful in terms of this collective effort. The President of the Assembly, the Vice President of Covilhã, Madam MP of our district, parishes, mayors, NGOs also hereby represented, citizens. Allow me, please, to finish my welcoming intervention by telling you something that we feel. And we feel this on account of a program that was not that easy also to bring to the table. I would say that even in political terms, it was not advisable, if you will, in terms of the political side, without its purpose, but a policy or a politics into something that is more connected with power, which is when we start talking about migrations and we start positioning this at the center of our local policy, namely paying support to so many that come to us as a safe harbor, and that they find it here, and those who come to us directly, which are actually a minority. Well, the issue of women, the issue of what are all the difficulties that exist in this world. And we felt this before. Climate change, for example, if there is a time of drought in some latitude, generally in countries that are not developed, this means movements, not talking about wars and conflicts, not talking about changes of regimes for things as absurd as what happened in Afghanistan, because that's obvious. It suffices to look into the climate schedule, the climate spectrum, to see where phenomena are becoming more acute, putting at stake the survival, the elemental survival of those people, those communities, those countries, to understand part of what it means, the phenomena today of migration that are non-organized, almost forced, if you will. Then you have the ones that are actually forced under all our agreements of protection to people who are being persecuted, and those where the agreements such as Ukraine in terms of the issue of war zones, where this is in the forefront. We see it clearly, how difficult it is. We get hundreds, maybe thousands of people under the umbrella of that welcoming program. And we see that the critical side of including women is critical in the process. We have one of the best success rates in Europe, not to say the world. We are one of the 8 capitals of inclusion and diversity declared by BC, and our holistic program, which is actually quite intensive, it is surely effective. It has an effectiveness in terms of 4 times less time, so that the person who comes to us is a full-fledged citizen, having a job, having a home, being able to have all the normalization, the normality of any other citizen who has been here the longest. 4 times less time is a lot of time. It's a lot of time of life that you give these people in order to have a full-fledged citizenship. We have around 73, 74% of success in terms of males, in terms of the process of inclusion, in terms of labor market, in terms of the accelerator that we have, in terms of inclusion in the labor market compared to women. It's less than 50%. It's much harder, you know. Why? Well, because first, it's what we have to provide from the point of view of jobs. It's a bit trickier. Then, when we're talking about so many women that we have under the umbrella of the Ukraine, many of them have the support to children, as you well know. Women and children is a significant part, 90% of what is our answer to the Ukraine. The issue of female entrepreneurship, looking into the opportunities that this brings about in terms of circular economy, bioeconomy, it's an important field. We have accelerators and incubators for many years, and we do understand that we can make a difference in terms of what is the component of self-employment, entrepreneurship, and let's call it a certain awareness raising in terms of the tasks, in terms of the jobs that are multi-gender. A few years ago, we had almost 90% of our engineers were men. We felt it when we did the program of attraction, and I would say that now we are still quite far from parity, but we are close to 70%. And the goal is that all these issues that in the 21st century make no sense, having kind of a constraint in terms of professions that are male or female in the 21st century, that issue will not be an issue at all. And within the opportunities that the green economy brings about, this must be pivotal, because we know, Mr. Secretary of State, we know that if we think about jobs for the future and for the present, the ones that are connected with green economy is truly sectors where we have greater employability. So there will be at the end of the day more economy. We want it to be inclusive, fair, and sustainable. So it must be everything, actually, in terms of everything that is the approach from the point of view of the reading of this world. We work hard on these principles. We work on different scales, and I would like to say that we are fully committed to be at the forefront of supporting that movement, and that movement is helpful so that people who come to us, the women that we have in our municipality, and above all, those who come to us and that live and are able to be successful, having them as an example, because at the end of the day, more than just a speech, surely, more than what we can say from a conceptual standpoint, the example is very important. And the last thing that I want to say is that we should give priority to those that, because of their merit and their work, can show that it is possible. If we do it, we will be successful and we will bring more people into our movement. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. I now give the floor online and in English of Heather Brooks, Policy Advisor in the Environment and Climate Team at Eurocities. Recently been working with cities, national ministries, MEPs and NGOs on the recently adopted European Union Nature Restoration Act, which will co-lead the development of guidelines for its implementation as part of the Urban Agenda Partnership on Green Cities. Heather, you have the floor. Thank you.
I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, hopefully you can see that in full slide. Okay. I just want to say thank you very much, first of all, for the invitation. I'm really delighted to be here for the launch of this really important initiative. I'm here representing Eurocities as we hope to help disseminate this and connect to European cities. So yes, my name is Heather Brooks. I'm policy advisor. We also have different forms of ways we work, so task forces. And I wanted to share with you just a little bit of information around our gender equality task force, which is obviously of relevance. And here this task force is really looking to mainstream this approach kind of throughout Eurocities policy and project. So it's looking at working with Eurocities, our organization, and how can we mainstream this throughout our different thematic areas and our different working groups. But then within itself, it also helps build the capacity of cities by sharing best practices. So it's also looking at kind of gender sensitive urban planning. So looking at really exchanging these different ideas amongst cities, some of the front runners, but also trying to then disseminate that across to different European cities. One other task force that I thought was particularly relevant to mention is the Sustainable Textiles Task Force, which has now unfortunately closed. But this task force was fixed term and had a defined output, and it specifically was addressing the issue of that high percentage of textiles that end up as waste in landfill. And it was developed in response to the EU textile strategy. And it was a group of core cities working together to come forward with a policy statement. And they had a few interesting key messages that I wanted to share with you. So that was that used textiles should be designed in a way that fosters repair to create new businesses opportunities. And that Commission should introduce an extended producer responsibility schemes for textiles. And then the EU and national funding programs should prioritise supporting cities to facilitate the creation of these new circular businesses. So you can see how this really links in then to this fantastic new initiative that's being launched today. So it's all about then also kind of building these links and these relationships between cities and local businesses and other stakeholders to create those localised jobs. Finally, I just wanted to highlight one of our projects. We have a number of different projects and you can find out more about them on our website. But I wanted to highlight this one, which is, I'm sure many of you have heard about, but it's the EU mission for climate neutral and smart cities. And we are focused, we're part of the organisation Net Zero Cities that is implementing this then with cities. And this is really about supporting cities, a set of 112 cities working towards climate neutrality. And it's really then creating this kind of one-stop shop. So bringing all of that information together for these cities as to how they can achieve that. It's supporting them with specific advisors, so technical advisors for the developing of a roadmap to climate neutrality. And then also we'll be supporting them to develop a investment plan. So looking at how that can then be financed, how can all of those individual actions be financed? And that roadmap is developed with a number of different stakeholders on the ground. So it's really about bringing together business, academia, citizens. It's about bringing all of those different stakeholders within the city to work together and agree on various different goals and measures to achieve that climate neutrality. And then, as I say, be financed. Beyond just supporting these 112 cities that are part of this mission, Of course, the project is looking at kind of disseminating this information further. And there is a twinning program that twins then together mission cities with non-mission cities. So really trying to work together to broaden the knowledge that's being kind of developed within this project and pair that up with cities that aren't involved directly within the project. And this is then, focused on that kind of systematic transformation on the ground. I believe the second round of that twinning program, the applications has just closed, but there will be another round coming up. So just to raise awareness of that too. You can find out about this and all of our projects, our working groups, etc., on our website. And you can contact then our membership organisers, so Sinead Mullins, who's our Director of Outreach and Membership. And we're really looking forward then to kind of disseminating, learning more about what's going on within this initiative and disseminating that to our cities. Thank you very much.
Muito obrigada, Iter. Passo agora a
Thank you,
palavra.
Heather Brooks. I now give the floor to the Secretary of State for the Environment, Emílio Souza. Thank you for honoring us with your presence at the opening session of this event. Thank you for having me. Let me greet the Mayor of Fundão, my friend Paulo Fernandes, the Chairman of the Assembly, Madam Vice President of the City of Estarreja, Isabel, so happy to see you, all representatives of different entities, telling you how happy I am to be here, because this entrepreneurship, this female entrepreneurship in the field of sustainable development is mandatory. It's not just female entrepreneurship, it's entrepreneurship per se. And now I was following the intervention of the Mayor, Paulo Fernandes, and he gave us a geostrategic view, mentioning, and beautifully so, that the war is on many parts of the globe. And I was precisely thinking that humanity is facing such great challenges that we don't really understand the war. Our current war should be the war on sustainable development or for sustainable development. So most of the world, or the developed world, has realized that the greatest challenge that humanity faces is the quality of life, keeping the planet, sustainable development. And all of a sudden, we see people doing things and people killing each other. It makes no sense. Humanity is riddled of examples of crazy things, which is what's happening when we should have a war against the unsustainable development, resources, preserving biodiversity, water, food for all. This should be our war. It's not, unfortunately. I think that in Europe and a significant part of the world has realized that this will be our problem. The subject and the title is quite fortunate of entrepreneurship, although I do consider that in terms of the new challenges that humanity faces, the capacities of women are above the male ones. So we are going from a time where, let's call it, the resource was muscle. Now it's not. We have developed tools, machineries, infrastructure that have replaced muscle strength. They are different. I think that women are ahead because they can do more than one thing at the same time, and we cannot. A lot of advantages in terms of female entrepreneurship. Let me tell you that this challenge that we're facing, and I have been witnessing this in the challenges that we have whenever I talk to our technicians. They are quite competent in waste, which is a field that we were discussing. The problems that we have, Cristina Carola from MAPA is here with us. So we know that in 3 or 4 years things will disappear. The tariff is crazy. It will increase even more. And for a landfill, we need 5 years. So how can we solve it? The issue of water, we have the Algarve with great difficulties in other areas of the country, so there is a vast set of challenges. After meeting with people, I knew a bit about things, but one thing is what we see as a representative, and then is to see the figures in front of me. And in the first 1 or 2 months, I almost could not sleep, so worried that I was. And I'm not there anymore, you know. I'm not worried. I'm facing a challenge that I think we will be able to win. I said this a few days ago. Europe was always ahead in terms of environmental issues on account of its development, of course, was able to realize that environmental issues were crucial. But in Europe, we've always been accused. When I say Europe, I'm mentioning the EU. We have always been accused of harming the competitiveness of our companies because environmental demands that we're bringing into productive procedures make our products less competitive in a global market. And that's what's happening. Some think that we should, add some tariffs to cars that come from China. They have better quality at low cost, so it is unloyal competition. I don't know if this is the right way to go. It's something that in the history of economy never worked, but it is on the table. And Europe always faced these challenges of being competitive, trying to maximize the respect for environmental issues. And I believe that there is a competitive advantage to it because all these efforts throughout the years has also gifted Europe from skills that in many parts of the world, maybe the grand majority of the world doesn't have. I'm following some sectors now. A few days ago, I've been with a group of the apparel industry and footwear also. According to Portuguese and European legislation, we have the responsibility of the manufacturer. This is the greatest goal. This is a joint and extended responsibility of the manufacturer. I've been in 2 important events of footwear and apparel, garment industry. Any of this sector is working properly with universities, with companies, and in clothing, which is something that many times we Europeans, we send it to Africa and we see piles of clothes burning. I look at the sector working with the university in order to start developing an industry that is tearing down used fabrics to take advantage of fibers. What now is a problem is that we pay some hundreds to pay for mitigating waste is becoming a secondary raw material, a new product, a new usage, where we start thinking differently. I was in São João da Madeira, it's the footwear lapi caps on using the sole, the leather, the shoelace. They are working properly from those products to make new shoes, new products. And I've seen there things that are truly finished. So the challenge now will be to put together a network for collection to raise awareness before citizens for that need of not putting it in the waste bin, but putting anywhere else, because we do have this need. Hence, the APA, the agency, will launch a campaign in terms of bio-waste up to the end of the year. We will launch a campaign of 9 million euros because we won't be able to do it just with scientific knowledge alone. The only way is to get the involvement of citizens. While we cannot mobilize our citizens for this challenge, while we don't learn that plastics is in one place, paper is in another place, The old refrigerator is in a different one, shoes is in a different place, clothes is in a different place. The citizen needs to learn all of this. We will always be beyond the challenge. We do have a challenge. There are many tools. And this challenge, we Latin people, our civic culture, it's a bit different of Nordic ones. So we are much better in many things, but we must do better, and we can do better. That's why I say that this competitive disadvantage that Europe had in the economy, this issue that we are working on sustainable development, might be advantageous in the future if, instead of importing certain raw materials, we can give a second or third life to raw materials that we've bought in a timely manner. There will be a commercial advantage to it. That's why I think that Europe can have, within the industry of transformation of used products, a great advantage. And this is actually happening. I spoke about the academia, I spoke about some company friends is working properly on this new industrial cluster, because in Europe this advantage will be a thing. And dear Susanna, and to the team at the project, entrepreneurship has all the reasons to be successful. From our end, on the Ministry of the Environment, we're here. Because I think that we have sustainable development, we do have a business opportunity. Without business, things will not work. And I think that a developed country such as ours, we are amongst the most developed in the world. We must not forget that the environmental issues are solved with the academia, with the development of economies, not painting walls or with rallies. No, we must use our mind, our brains. I think that no one thinks about not having a smartphone, beautiful clothes. We all want to have these things, but we must realize that we must manage our planet's resources. That's why we're here. So to the organization, to the city of Fundão, once again, congratulations to Paulo Fernandes for proving that even within the hinterland, we can do things properly. And Fundão is a huge example of an amazing city. And now, to female entrepreneurship, I'm sure that from our end, we are here to help in whatever you need, but more than just helping, it's this ability to be entrepreneurs and this understanding that we can do a lot more, a lot better. So do enjoy, and this forum will be very, very important to the future. Thank you, Mr. Secretary of State. Let's now begin the panel on resilient cities, adapting cities to climate change. And we begin by asking our speakers. I would ask you to please join us. Let's start with an intervention by the scientific coordinator on the National Roadmap for Adaptation 2100. He's the principal researcher of the Dom Luiz Institute and assistant professor in the Department of Geographical Engineering from the University of Lisbon. Over the last 30 years, he focused his research efforts on climate modeling, climate change, energy and sustainability, leading the research group Climate Change, Land, Ocean, Processes and Extremes at the Dom Luiz Institute, scientific coordinator of the EA Grants Project National Roadmap for Adaptation 2100, assessment of the vulnerability of Portuguese territory in the 21st century, and led the Alentejo Regional Strategy for Adaptation to Climate Change, and was recently appointed For the Portuguese Council of Climate Action, a member of the Scientific Committee of the PG Program on Climate Change and Sustainable Development and the Scientific Committee for the Environment. Allow me to give the floor to Pedro Matos Soares. Good morning. I do apologize for arriving late from Lisbon. Thank you for having me. Congratulations for putting together this event on entrepreneurship. It seems to be a very important thing. Thank you for being here. Let me greet the Secretary of State, the Mayor, Susana. Thank you for having me. I will try to make a presentation. I do have a lot of slides, technical ones, and some results also that might be important within the context of climate change and the needs of adaptation in Portugal, and then some regional examples and more local for the cities. From that standpoint, let's see if this is working. Just to tell you about the rationale behind the roadmap. The first design was to connect all of this definition and to assess its quality with observations. And with that assessment in mind, to bear in mind which are the best models, putting together an evolution on climate as faithful as possible to feed this exercise of modeling impacts in the sectors which are highly vulnerable in Portugal, talking about forest fires, water, its synergy with agriculture, because agriculture takes on the greatest part of water in Portugal, 75%, and modeling coastal areas. This means that this project had the intention of characterizing physical impacts, then also economic costs of an action, not doing anything. And we are going into an effort of adaptation in our cities, and also the adaptation costs for the territorial vision in terms of our country. To know what are the main challenges, we must bear something in mind, something that's very important, that has to do with the global future from the standpoint of GHGs. And this is pivotal when we define a path for climate action, regional, national, local. This is where we need to know where we stand. And from a society point of view, I don't know if the computer is working. We have three scenarios of evolution. We have a set which is the desirable one in terms of Paris, with a global view that allows us to mitigate this kind of resolution, and then the RCP 4.5, and then some that we wish to avoid, which is the so-called high-end worst-case scenario, if you will, which was of a continuous and monotonous part of emissions. Global warming, they are quite differentiating, see 1.5 to 2 degrees with parents, and a warm between 4 and 5 degrees in the worst-case scenario. We must take into account what is the scenery to which we are evolving. And if we look at the last reports, we are evolving from a global standpoint to this middle ground. But this has been mentioned today. We live in a world of uncertainty from a geopolitical standpoint, from global agreement in order to get this reduction emissions. So we must bear in mind these three scenarios, not taking on that the future is already defined. To put together this evolution, we have the global one, we have the climate definitions and then statistical ones of AI, that can give us useful information on a local scale of the city. And that is the rationale that we follow within a roadmap and other spin-offs of projects of adaptation in Portugal and on an European scale. Just to tell you how different is the future in Portugal according to these three scenarios. When we talk about summer temperatures, we are talking about three climatologies, 3 periods of 30 years. And then of the three scenarios, look at Paris, look at the west one. If we see the increase of maximum temperature, which is the one that's portrayed here, they are very different. In Paris, we had an increase of 1.5 degrees of maximum temperature in national terms. If we go to the intermediate one, the one that we are evolving to, we will be talking about where 3.5 in maximum temperature, and then the west one, we're talking about maximum temperatures of 6 degrees and a half. These are colossal from the point of view of heat waves. They are scenarios that have a direct impact in health, productivity, in civil construction in our cities, the frequency of heat waves at the end of the century, and climatology, increasing heat waves that can give us to 3 heat waves per year, which is more or less what we are experiencing. If we were to discuss the middle ground, we're talking about 6 of them, and in the worst case scenarios, it's 10 heat waves. From a society standpoint, the impact is absolutely different, hence the emphasis in terms of our capacity to monitor the path that we are trailing. If we were to account the excess of mortality in Portugal because of these heat waves, projections are actually a bit terrifying, and we hope not to reach these figures. We can double the excess of mortality because of the heat in Portugal, and we can multiply eightfold, which is quite significant, and we must prepare our situations in terms of climate refuge, with reduction of energy poverty. The measures of adaptation are well known. We must have the capacity to implement them. From the point of view of stress on our economic activities and the sector of water, temperatures are very important. When we have high temperatures, we have more potential evapotranspiration. It means we are talking about water stress in agriculture, in our forests, and also in danger of fire that escalate with high temperatures. When we're talking about precipitation, what we see is that according to Paris, we have reduction of rain which are not significant, but when we look at the intermediate scenery, we have some losses, less 15, 25, less than 40% for the south of Portugal. It means that this is one more ingredient in terms of water scarcity in the south that we are experiencing today, and that will be worsened with this process. We spoke about temperature, rain, but also, unfortunately, in Portugal, and that's why we call it the hotspot of climate change, we have an increase which is quite significant to the north and to the south. From this standpoint, and then some results, 10, 15 minutes, not more, talking about of agroforests, of wildfires, with the needs of irrigation and with the three scenarios: loss of all our basins. When we think about territorial cohesion of our country, we don't have a lot of water in the north, but that the problem is just to the south. No, of course not. We do have projections of important losses in water availability and the volume storage in our dams. So we must foster all these measures that to make a sense in terms of the evolution that we quantify here. Look at the Alqueva. It's quite peculiar from the standpoint of water for all articulation to the south of Portugal. So what we are expecting is a loss of around 8% at the middle of the century. We are not talking at the end of the century. And at the end of the century, 1/3 of the Alqueva, if we continue in this worst-case scenario, will disappear. Talking about forest fires, well, high temperature, less water, there is a galloping risk of fire. If we look at the evolution, we've doubled, tripled, quadrupled the number of days of danger of fire. Imagine a country, a territory like the center of Portugal, living with 2 months of danger of extreme fire. Just imagine what this means in terms of defending our population and our territory. When we project in terms of statistical modeling, what is the period of return of fires in Portugal into the Sena, we have a fire in the center all 5 years of 100,000 hectares. Those fires that we all wish to prevent. If we look at this, we see that these 5 years mitigate to 1.7, 1.2 years. Instead of having a big fire every 5 years, we have a big fire at every year and a half, which is in fact quite worrying. Talking about coastal areas, this is Fundão, of course, but we have a territory which is coastal also. It's quite a long coast, and we modulate all this from the point of view of the transportation of sediments because of the average level of the sea and sea agitation. We see the example in terms of the island that most of us know, but we have setbacks of around 100 meters. So when we have, let's call it an extreme episode with the return of 25 years, that leads to the breakage of a problem at the island of Faro. We have edified areas there that we must adapt to the territory. When we see the set of our territory, which is vulnerable to this problematic of the average sea level, we see that we have 600 square kilometers, talking about an important portion of our territory. Just an example of what we do in terms of the territory for municipalities. We characterize it via a risk matrix. What is the risk, the climate risk connected to severity of heat waves for Barcelos, for example? And we see that for vulnerable groups, we do have a lot more risk than for the population. It means that we must be topic from the standpoint of adaptation measures to protect vulnerable populations. Talking about cities, so this is important. Let me give you a very short example of what is the usage of physical models combined with AI, with machine learning, to better project what is the heat wave, for example, in Madrid, where we have this made by other cities. But look at this, the heat wave that we can see, how the standard models see this in the day and night, and how can we improve the representation of that 2 meters of temperature and on the surface, which is so important. Thank you. A lot of people participated. in this work, more women than men, actually. It's just a shame that I don't have any more time, but thank you for your attention. We have an online presentation now of the head of the Climate Action and Circular Economy Division of Lola City Council, Lídia Terra. And we would like to welcome her to share with us the Lollecas as a city in terms of climate change. Lídia Terra has a degree in geography from the University of Porto, an MA in spatial planning, and a postgraduate qualification in geographic information systems, currently completing her PhD in climate change and sustainable development policies. With a career dedicated to territorial and climate sustainability, she was involved in drawing up the first municipal climate action plan approved in the country, Lolé Municipal Climate Action Plan. Since 2015, she's been the head of the Climate Action and Circular Economy Division at the Lola City Council. Under her leadership, this department has ensured the implementation of climate change adaptation and mitigation projects and monitored the targets for the fulfillment of the Sustainable Development Goals. Lídia Terra, thank you, and you have the floor. Thank you. I'm sorry for not being with you at Fundão. I've been there 2 years ago, and the war on Ukraine had just started. And I was very happy with what I heard in terms of welcoming. And I was not expecting to see such a consolidated project. And let me tell you, congratulations for what you're doing. I will go to Fundão very, very soon, I'm sure. Telling you that this has been developed in the municipality of Lolé. I don't know if you can see my presentation.
Não está a passar a apresentação.
The presentation is actually not working. Some technical issues mentioned by our speaker. Well, in the municipality of Lolé, as a reference state, since 2013, the issues of adaptation to climate change were worked within the file of the environment. Climate change was not something that was connected to the everyday life of municipalities. The municipality of Lolé, it's a municipality which is quite diverse, that has always worked on environmental issues, but it's also a hotspot of climate change, so we do have a bit of everything that comes to us in terms of extreme events. 2013, we were called upon by a consortium, which is Climadept Local, and with a municipal strategy of adaptation to climate change, a project that we did welcome, namely accompanied by a technical team, which is quite connected at that time. I worked at planning from there on. This has consolidated and got huge expression alongside the municipal strategy of Lolé. Other 26 municipalities developed their strategies, working in the sense of constituting a network, which is an association, which is a local adapt. The municipality of Lolé, from the start, wished to create a brand, which is Lolé Adapta. In all our projects, we do have this brand, all projects that have to do with sustainability. In order to move forward to the strategy outside of the limits of the organics of the municipality, we built a local council of climate change so that alongside a set of entities, we could reflect on projects and on the way that we could develop more initiatives of adaptation, mitigation, management, and knowledge. It started with 20-something entities. Let me tell you that now there are 83 of them within this local Council of Climate Action, and there are practical projects that I will show you Next, I don't have a lot of time, so let me be pragmatic in my presentation. So this has been actually a very important body in adapting to climate change in the municipality. Well, this was clear for the president of the city of Lolé, Vitor Aleixo, that he had to create an organizational structure. He started with a unit and now it's a division with a technical team of set technicians working alone on these aspects of climate action, where we get further ahead a municipal plan of climate action and also a declaration of climate emergency that we signed last year. As I said, the municipality of Lolé is associated to many extreme climate actions beyond what is seen here in terms of infographics. We do have pictures. We do have some aspects that are clearly visible, coastal erosion, orange. There is a deficit of water with which we can count on, floods, peaks of rain, and we study in terms of the academia, and we know that we can count on some of these sets or scenarios in the future. That's where we develop our work on. We did have a strategy of adaptation. Then we had a plan for energy and climate sustainability, and it was clear that we had to connect these two plans, these two tools, into a municipal plan of climate action. Article 14 of the law makes it mandatory. It's already approved. We are on the stage of implementation. So this plan of ours has a set of measures that have to do with adaptation, mitigation, management, and knowledge. It is a plan that does have some project charts, and these are our priority actions on which we try to work hard. One of the things that we see here is a contingency plan for drought periods. And this drought period and its analysis has been very important. The fact that we do have this plan has allowed us in this contingency moment to take a set of measures, looking into municipal tools. We try to reconvert areas that only had, I will present beyond, they only had grass, but they were not even leisure spaces with indigenous species with less needs for water. So it's been a work that's been quite close to the population. Many actions we bring to us a set of landscape architects so that they can address these aspects to their clients. Also, condominium managers so that they go to the members. It's been quite a close connection talking about the emergency, which is to take care of water. In terms of the work of the municipality, a lot has been done because we are aware that everything that's connected with drought has to do with the network and the grid of piping, measurement, control, the meters. This has been something that has been growing and it's becoming more emergent in the municipality. The reusage of water, we have been witnessing the projects where it makes sense. We do have the issue of the reusage of water for the municipal swimming pools of Quarteira. There is water which is purged every day, which is then lost. We are aiming towards a reservoir. That water will be treated for urban cleaning and for watering areas that are in close connection with these devices. The other one is using grey water from a locker room at the school for its potential, and also the potential of the multiplying effect alongside youngsters who use the school. So the water of these locker rooms is treated for watering the surroundings of the school. It's been a learning for us as a municipality, but it's important for water also, so we must work on it step by step. Another study that we have developed was a study on the level of the sea. The municipality of Lola has 3 kilometers of coast, so we must look into it. So there is some adaptation, and the ones that are susceptible to it. We had a project in terms of the municipal plan. It's a plan that is very important for the Quarteira population, which is this polygon that we see in red. But when we got the study, we had to rethink on the project. So this causes an impact because this takes time, but we did want to give our contribution. We have this knowledge. The municipality will give this first example, and this project has different issues that have to do with sustainability, and it will be also a barrier in terms of floods in urban areas of this front. Also, the natural reserve of Trafal, this classification did not exist before. It is a field with an effect of the green lung between Quarteira and Val do Lobo, an area that is quite desirable, and we were able to get it through preventive measures and other tools. We were able to evolve into this process of classification. It is an area that does have a wet area, so a lot of habitats, and we consider that this process is quite valuable. 125 hectares of an area that will be protected. Many have been the projects that we have been developing for Quarteira, for beaches, everything connected to the municipal plan of climate action, different agreements, because the municipality cannot work alone. One of the agreements that we defined lately is with CEA, which is a research center, which gives us some support in terms of our work, in terms of soft mobility. We do have a lot of leeway for the municipality of Lolé, an agenda for sustainability. This agenda has allowed us to map evaluation of ecosystems. We are analyzing also how can we, alongside private entities and the owners of the territory, there are no owners, we know, but those who have that connection, we are aware that we must feel that this benefit of protecting the territory and what we feel via this subject, strengthening green areas, it's something which is actually quite present in the municipality of Lolé. There is a project of the urban and agricultural part. We have this aspect that I've mentioned, that we are reconverting everything that has to do with what we don't consider to be necessary currently throughout the municipality. It's been a common practice in the last few years. One of the adaptation projects to the effects of heat in urban areas, this was a tender in the area of municipal sourcing that feels properly this effect. And if we can get a project to it that we believe will provide an answer to this problem.
Em termos de projeto com mais impacto também.
In terms of a greater impact in national terms and international terms, it's the Geopark of the Algarve between Olé, Sils and Albufeira, which has an important definition connected with climate action and the promotion of the local resources. trying to find an area for reserves of water, but also for the regulation of some areas with strong floods in order to see its dynamics, trying to control in certain areas. I'm sorry for interrupting, but we must keep it short. We are running out of time. You're absolutely right. So we do have many tools. Our festivals and our events try to be eco events. In terms of ODSs, we have the ODS local platform where we try to measure all our action for the fulfillment of the goal. Now, this is what we have. We have a project of energy communities in the school that I would invite you all to visit, where all these projects are, and it's quite interesting. So a lot of Portuguese municipalities, this is done within the academia, as I said. The municipality of Lolé has been recognized in the report by the OECD. This is set on indicators, on technical empowerment in funding. So we try that all of this has access to funding because we know that adaptation has high costs, participation, and communication. So these are the strategic axes. Thank you, and I do apologize for taking your time. Thank you.
Muito obrigada, doutora Lídia. Pedimos desculpa.
Thank you. Sorry. Let's present the case of the Penang Island in Malaysia. We have Sofia Castelo. She's a landscape architect, more than 20 years of experience in design and managing products of landscape architecture in China, the United States, Australia, and Malaysia. She's focusing on solutions based on nature for resilience and urban planning. Sofia, you have the floor. We actually don't have the audio from the speaker. We will resume as soon as we do. Not just the impacts between the Southeast of Europe and governance and funding. This would be just an hour alone. Telling you about the project of the Penang Island started in 2019, the first project of urban adaptation to climate change in Malaysia. It is a project based on scientific evidence, not just in its design, but in searching for, I do apologize, there are some issues, some technical issues. This is something coming from our speaker. It's not just within its design. In terms of the impacts of the project, trying to create the structure to permit the adaptation of the island to climate change, but to check the impact on all measures. The four main challenges that have been identified was temperature. There is an increase in temperature, which is quite remarkable, and this increase will continue. There is an increase in rain also. In the last 40 years, there's been an increase in terms of rainfall with some floods that led to the death of 7 people and a lot of material damage. And then there is a social vulnerability. There are vulnerable groups, women and girls who are impacted for many reasons. It could be different, of course, but there is youth which is not informed, less informed, different from Europe. less informed than the oldest ones. In terms of institutional capacity, we do have in hospitals are not identifying deaths for heat stress. This is given to cardiac or respiratory diseases. There was no infrastructure we had to create. There is no holistic visions within the city. Not just the differences in terms of governance and impact, it's also in terms of communicating science. We do have data from the weather station. Between 1951 and 2018, there was an increase of 1.50 degrees of environmental temperature. And this is not important for those that we have presented to. We chose to present the two surfaces and variations because they do communicate the challenge in a better manner to populations and to decision makers. So this is Georgetown, which is a city which is actually UNESCO World Heritage, and we clearly see a linear standard of trees, of streets. We can identify it on account of that pattern. We also have pictures on the surface. We have this area which has less heat stress in terms of Georgetown. And the most interesting one, it's not the interruption of the shadow of the trees, which is accompanied by the increase in temperature. It's the highest temperature at that roof to the left, as you can see. Immediately after taking these pictures, we went to the historic center, which is the hotter area with the heat wave effect. And we see here that the difference of temperature is almost 30 degrees, but that's not the most important information, is that the highest temperature is on the ground where people are. And people, pedestrians, in Malaysia, like in many areas, are the most vulnerable ones. People in Malaysia, middle age, almost don't go to the street, and we have an increase in rain, which leads to, this is a picture of those floods. Then this is a different problem. I will not discuss this because there is no time. The problem of traditional drainage, which is the vehicle of flooding for cities. And this is the program, 4 components to provide an answer to the 4 challenges. Integration of green areas in a strategic manner in order to break the heat wave, also to have the special corridors, and then creating programs to promote social resilience, creating a public health program, identifying heat stroke and heat stress, the Penang network to give an holistic vision and an online platform with physical and practical aspects in order to convey information to other cities of Malaysia. This focuses on 2 areas of the island, in Georgetown and Bayon La Paz, but also obviously this is the physical fulfillment with an impact throughout the island. Basically, this is just a visualization of the 4 components. These are solutions or nature-based solutions, green areas. We know in terms of breaking the heat stroke, the most effective is actually the trees on the streets, or tree-lined streets, if you will. These are all the elements of the program. Let me show that we do have a divide in 4 strategies. First, awareness raising. Second, knowledge. Third, social empowerment. Fourth, empowerment. And this brings important results to it. And the goals of the program is to mitigate temperature, floods, to improve social resilience. Well, then we did a lot of exhibitions. The project has been presented more than 40 times in different platforms. We involved vulnerable population. There are very interesting results in going to vulnerable population. It's absolutely different to go to vulnerable population and to go to decision makers or practitioners. Usually, vulnerable population is closer to the physical reality. And then, I'm very proud to say that the project won the Global Cities Award for one of the best in the world. Last year, it was the same one for the better environmental management of a Muslim city, and we had $10 million for the execution of the program also. Okay, that was it. Thank you. I think I was on time. Thank you. Thank you all to the members of the panel. We do apologize, but we are quite late for the next presentations. It's not possible to ask questions from our speakers. Very interesting issues, I'm sure, would be about, but maybe we can start with the next panel. Let me just thank you for being with us, and we will be here to answer any questions you might have after the session. Thank you. Let's go to the panel of Inclusive Cities, Gender Perspective in Planning Cities. And let me bring about the members of the panel to take your seats. Yes, Councilwoman Isabel Simões Pinto from Estarreja, and Olga Lopes Racamonde from the city of Lugo. Thank you. Okay. We begin the panel with an intervention, an online intervention by Monica Ferro. She's the director of the United Nations Population Fund Office since 2017. She's the head of the fund's delegation in Geneva. Thank you for being with us. You have the floor. Hello, good morning. After all these years working with Zoom, I could not find the microphone. Good morning to all of you. I think that you can hear me, right? Okay. Let me start by thanking you for having me, and I'm sorry not being able to be with you today. I tried to change my flight, but I couldn't. Let me start by thanking Paulo Fernandes. I will not say that we were classmates and we know each other for more than 30 years because he didn't give me permission to do it, but we were classmates. And I do have a set of friends who are with us in this session, and let me send a huge greeting to the MP Helena Reis, to Susana Viseu, and to Vitor Ramalho. I know that they're there with you, and I'm quite envious from not being with this. I work for the Funds for the Population of the UN, and as you can see, an agency that has in a title itself the subjects of population. It's an agency that is interested in the issues that are being debated. The resilience, climate resilience, it is something that we are worried at, and I was very happy for having this connection and the impact that climate change have in terms of groups in situation of vulnerability. Not always easy to pass on this message because apparently not a lot of data showing this implication. We are able to show how populations are being affected in disproportion by climate change, because all crises that we have, none of them is gender neutral. But in the issue of cities, inclusive cities, we are perfectly aware that this is one of the mega trends for which the Secretary General, the phenomena of urbanization, of agency, moving of people. So we are talking about how do we build an urban fabric that is inclusive, not just to this focus. That's why we work within the groups. For those who are not aware of it, we were created to provide the state's demographic data so that they could program their social and economic development. If you wish to build an infrastructure network, you need to know where these people are so that you can design proper public policy that are data-based. We are the agency with the census, which is, as you might imagine, the most complex operation that you can do. To put it in a granular manner, it's quite difficult. We do it supporting countries that are developing in other countries who do not need our technical support. We contribute to a training. We help to design questions, etc. This is where we're coming from, which means that as time went by, we went working not just on demographic data, but also in the determination of those demographics, which means if we are working on birth rates, we must work on fertility, on movements of populations. We must work on the phenomena determining our pathway of population, how we are born, how we move in the world, and how do we exit the population, which is by mortality rates. As time went by, and I am inspired seeing the cubes of the SDGs behind you, we align our answers with those which are the standards of international cooperation, talking about science, saying that 107 of the indicators to measure ODS have populational data, and census are very important so that we can measure that if they are ongoing or if we need to assess and redesign for the implementation. So as time went by, we went from an approach focused on figures into one that is focused on human rights. So Professor Liliana Reis will not be mad if I use freely this paradigm definition. That's what we did in the 90s, a paradigmatic change. We went from human for human rights. So our approach is based on human rights, and this is a long introduction to tell you that working with the states, we have offices in 150 countries, some like mine, I'm in London now. Some offices do advocacy, awareness raising. So we also do work in terms of funds for our projects, but magic happens in 130 countries where we work. We have office working with governments in 130 countries. In these programs, there are mega trends that are included. Urbanization, you are fully aware of this. You know that we are living in the greatest period of urban growth of our history, and this figure has grown up to 5 million. We are a bit more, and a lot of this is happening in Africa and in Asia, and it's bringing great transformations. And we must plan so that cities are inclusive from the standpoint of eliminating socioeconomic disparities, all manners of discrimination, talking about women. What is a city that is truly inclusive? It's a city that some call feminist, because feminist means that it is something that takes the imbalance of power and groups trying to build equality of opportunity between the groups. So we do have a set of recommendations that have to do, for example, to building safe public areas to make sure that the streets are properly lighted, that transportation from one side to the other are safe, to make sure that in urban planning there is a strategy that not just gender aware, it's also responsive and transformative to make sure that gender equality exists. It means that we must make sure that we have equal access to resources, access to healthcare, education, and housing to be acceptable, to make sure that we have economic independence and the well-being of women. How many women are we aware of that tell us that they would love to have more kids, but they can't because they cannot reconcile having a productive job and having access to a kindergarten, or because they are too expensive. And the independence of women, and I'm about to finish, representing the representation of processes. We have two locations, some slogans that are particularly designed for this subject. And a few years ago, the movement of people with disability has launched a slogan that has become a flagship, saying that nothing about us without us, okay? Not reconciling cities that are seen from a gender equality, answering the needs that women face in their movement in a city without sitting at the table in terms of the decision-making process. In terms of governance of the city, to see if projects are working, if the impact is proper or not. Two recommendations: eliminating gender-based violence. This seems very obvious, but this means that we need to implement politics and programs to prevent, alongside all of this, to answer violence against women, creating a culture of respect and responsibility. Many times we give examples on how this, and I'm sorry, how this can be counterintuitive. I said last week in a different location, then when we design the fields that welcome in terms of common sense, that bathrooms should be, imagine a field. We would put the bathrooms in the fields so that women could go to the bathroom with some privacy, giving a risk of sexual violence that was greater because there was not enough light, what we thought was privacy. But now we are the ones who design with the ACNUR for refugees. We design fields so that those services are at the core. Sometimes we need to think about what we say outside of the box, trying to understand what works and to ask women what works, because they know how to tell us what works. And then one last recommendation, which is to acknowledge that we are talking about different identities. We are talking about social roles that are given to each of us. I know it's hard. I know that all of you who are in that room and that wish to design inclusive and resilient cities are facing a set of prejudice and a set of, preconceptions. And it seems scary to think that the mindset must change. Social norms are built and can be rebuilt or deconstructed so we can bring other entities, accommodate and celebrate other entities. So, a resilient city from this standpoint is a city that gives priority to gender equality and that acknowledges that the empowerment of women And eliminating inequalities is done by inclusive policies and infrastructures, creating a world and an environment that's safer, more egalitarian for all the people who coexist. I know I'm out of time, but let me tell you this. When you are designing these cities, please recognize that the megatrend of urbanization, one of the other megatrends is the aging of the population. So when we are designing these cities, we must include the voice of the youngster for this intergenerational work, which is not magical, it's something that we can do specifically. Thank you for having me. I'm available to answer any questions you might have by email. I know we're running out of time. Via social media. I'm very easy to communicate with, so I would invite you to stay with us because we will have a conference on demographic resilience, the capacity of countries of recognizing their demographics and to prepare public policies to make sure that those who live there, that they have decent and life of their rights are fulfilled. I hope to have contributed. So I'm available for whatever you deem necessary. Thank you. Thank you, Monica, for being with us. As you know, we are running out of time, so I would ask the next presentations to please don't go beyond the 7 minutes that you've been given. Allow me to give the floor to the Councillor of Estarreja, Isabel Simões Pinto, to share their experience in terms of gender equality. Isabel Simões Pinto. No audio yet. Let's give it a minute. No audio yet. We will resume the interpreting as soon as we get audio from the room. Unfortunately, we are not getting the sound from this speaker. I'm absolutely sure that the technical team is already on top of this issue and they will solve it immediately. And here it is. Well, the municipality of Estarreja still has a long way to go pertaining issues of gender equality and equality and non-discrimination. So
eu peço desculpa, pronto, com o nosso plano será assim?
With our plan.
Ok, já percebi. Com o nosso plano para a igualdade e não
With our plan for equality and non-discrimination, we take on a commitment of promotion of public policies of equality and non-discrimination, always with a view of improving the quality of life of all citizens. The process we began in December in 2020 with designing the diagnostic, so anchored in terms of social development with this fifth goal. All of them are connected with the capacity of attracting visitors and investors, thinking about these dynamics in order to interconnect all of this. In terms of gender equality, we could quickly understand that there was a weak perception, a low perception, and knowledge, and even motivation of the subjects of gender equality. Is to think about the integration on the perspective of gender as a priority in a cross-sectional manner. And this is the way, the tool that's been of the equality of opportunity, egalitarian, without discrimination in different areas, starting with the internal view of the organization. It's been important to understand of the municipality and this awareness raising of workers. This is pivotal. Basically, 10 years ago, we did not discuss these subjects in local terms, and it is necessarily the main subject of public policy so that we can have a territory that it's actually inclusive, progressing in terms of sustainable development. There is a way to go in terms of empowering women, but the truth is that there is still a lot of inequalities. And I believe that the first step is to take on these inequalities in order to work towards finding and empowering all the skills and talents of women. And within this perspective of equality, equality of opportunity, which is what I think, and despite the fact that we can define a feminist city, I believe that we must be egalitarian and have a territory with equality of opportunities for all. In internal terms, in terms of actions, within our internal scope, we have 4 areas in terms of strategic planning, protecting this commitment in political terms, in terms of gender equality and non-discrimination, in terms of communication to adopt an inclusive communication policy, non-discriminatory promoting equality in the connections with other entities, this cross-sectional view in terms of managing human resources, although in the view of public administration, sometimes it's not that easy for us to impose or implement some actions that we would love to have because the law is not favorable. There are examples of best practices in terms of reconciling family, and that we can do more. We have selected 6 dimensions: employment, training, and conciliation, thus incentivizing all entities with whom, or those who have a direct action in our territory, adopting these practices of equality and non-discrimination, companies today clearly show this concern. Then, in terms of the movement of association, in terms of culture, sports, we have been incentivizing this practice without having this preconceived idea that there are sports or certain activities that are just for girls and others that are just for boys. So we start with this awareness raising in terms of education. It's the same thing. Starting to work on different projects in terms of educational community, in terms of equality, in terms of violence, in different areas that we work not just on educational community, but also in the community at large. Just to give you some examples of the plan that is developing, that we've discussed before, organizational practices that facilitate the reconciliation of the family view, inclusive language that serves as a purpose for an institutional communication that's inclusive, and we share for external entities that, in a sense of raising awareness so that they can have that adoption of that inclusive language. And last year, we had a meeting of best practices on equality and non-discrimination, where 4 municipalities were there, oddly enough, all of them represented by councilwomen. There are sporting events that are exclusive, where everyone can participate in terms of an obstacle race, in terms of BioRia, pedestrian paths, incentivizing environmental sustainability, and the same thing happens with Discovering the River, which has to do with the incentive to nautic sports that are inclusive. This year, and as I'm sure you'll know, Carnival is one of the definitions of our territory in terms of accessibility, making it more inclusive. We've created and implemented the color red system in our event, which has allowed that everyone would have access, not being limited to issues of colors, of the orientation in the territory, and that's very important in terms of planning of our territory, namely events. Then we have our creative laboratory, which is a cross-sectional view in terms of all municipal tools that develops different activities anchored on education for art, but I truly believe that via the art we can change attitudes, we can change and raise awareness towards a greater community. And then different workshops, awareness raising on terms of equality and non-discrimination in different contexts. Association movement companies that we have been doing. Not that long ago, I was shown that I had a minute. I had a video that I will not show. I'm about to finish, and I'm done saying that, well, within the subject of equality and non-discrimination, I think that we must all take on this commitment so that we can have preconceived ideas, so that we can raise awareness in order to build a world or a society, a community that is more egalitarian, more resilient, with public policies on the level of infrastructures that will allow women specifically to feel safe, valued, capable of making a difference in the world. Our slogan for our municipal plan for equality is "We are all bringing something to the table." So thank you. Have a great day. Thank you, dear Councilwoman. We do apologize for shortening your presentation time, but our program is quite ambitious. Allow us to give the floor to the next presentation from Cape Verde. Thank you for being with us. We have the advisor to the Mayor of Ribeira Grande, Santiago, Carlos Pires Ferreira, to present the best practices of the municipality within gender equality. Thank you for being with us. Thank you. Allow me to greet the Mayor of Fundão and the team. I would also like to thank the invite for taking part at this panel and to talk a bit about Ribeira Grande Santiago, its specificity, and what is our vision. Let me just give you some framework. Basically, I have 7 minutes and I will try to comply. Ribeira Grande de Santiago has a universal history to it, an exceptional universal value on account of all its history, connecting to the discovery, bringing new worlds, getting a status in 2009 of World Heritage by UNESCO. So it's a huge responsibility in the sense of not just defending this heritage, but also making it that cities and communities are more and more resilient and competitive. There is a slight advantage for women of 50%. Well, allow me to show you some of the stats in order to have some alignment with what we are looking for in terms of gender and women. Active population with 15 years or more, we have active population, more men. More men employed also. The activity rate, men, okay. Employment rate, men. Unemployment rate affects more women. Birth rates, it's a reality which is present in women. Literacy rate is greater in men. Migrating population, it's women that migrate the most. This, in terms of the context, we could discuss this in terms of other statistic dimensions that will lead our concerns so that there is a more assertive policy, if you will. There is the need for new approaches, fostering policies that are more inclusive, more sustainable, guided towards the greatest generational commitment. The representative of NFP spoke about the intergenerational issue, but allow me to go beyond. Transgenerational, beyond political parties. So this must be a commitment of decades. This is a new approach for us to see the needs and the communities with greatest equality of opportunities regardless of gender. So this is a huge challenge, and so that we can break the barriers and discrepancies of gender. So we need to foster an active participation of gender in groups in the planning, decisions, and development of needs, thereby integrating the perspective experiences at the same time that we must strengthen the investments upstream or downstream, actually. Well, actually, it was upstream. So this happens because of what happens before. The need to improve families, family indicators, education, skills, indicators, urban regeneration. Our colleagues spoke about requalification, regeneration, improving climate change. So we must invest on two dimensions. First, the visible one, and then a dimension which is sensitive of what is tangible and of what is intangible, and that we can have in terms of the transgenerational part, so that we can go into cities that are truly inclusive and sustainable, with the opportunity for all. In a first approach, all should be defined for the needs of all gender identities in order to collect and to correct imbalances and injustice. So it will be necessary to have a neutral approach in terms of gender, to make sure that all people, regardless of their gender identity, are treated with equality and respect in a way to get better mental health and well-being of people by creating an environment where they feel accepted, so that we can have an alignment with human rights of non-discrimination of any type. What we have been doing in this multi-sectorial approach, well-being, we have been promoting entrepreneurship fairs, that they are in clear disadvantage in Ribeira Grande, Santiago, gastronomical fairs. All of this happens with a view guided towards women. And also the social support, where we have invested in entrepreneurship, in training, empowerment. We provide like medical devices free of charge for the vulnerable population. Women are the heads of most families. Carlos, I would ask you to please finish as soon as you can. Rehabilitating different things, so all of this will free women, because primary care sector to free women so that we can get to a situation of more work and to be aligned with programs such as supporting families in need, assistance to vulnerable groups, where the protection of the rights of children and adolescents, promoting health. So there is a set of cross-sectional programs that the city has been implementing in the sense of mitigating those inequalities. I would like to talk about the specific project which is supported by UCLI with many partners, Africa, etc., implemented in an idea that if more than 70% is headquartered by women, it is a fishing village. So these are some of the goals of the project, thereby trying to create better conditions so that women can also get empowered economically, at the same time that we value the potential of the village and the natural heritage of the village, which is something quite specific that is connected with fisheries. Some projects have been developed in schools. So that issue of empowerment, but this happens fast, and then further ahead, there will be a transition into a neutral approach. Thank you for having me. The city of Ribeira de Santiago will benefit a lot from this integration, and we really need a strong involvement from the community, and above all, the involvement of men and women. In the process of planning and participatory, so that we are truly inclusive, resilient, and circular. Thank you. We didn't have a lot of time. I'm sorry for taking too much of your time. Thank you. Thank you. Let's now go to the municipality of Lugo in Galicia. So we have one more intervention, international intervention, with the presence of the Councilwoman for Social Welfare and Majorities, Olga Lopez Racamonde, representative of the municipality of Lugo on the Galician Solidarity Fund. You have the floor. We're just trying to connect the presentation. Thank you. Before I start, thank you to the organization for putting this together, presenting this project of the Lugo city. Thank you to Paulo Fernandes and the mayor of Fundão for welcoming us. And also, I do apologize because I don't speak Portuguese, so I do apologize. I'll speak slowly so that we can all understand each other. Well, in terms of sustainable development in Lugo, it's in the northern valley of Galicia, not the border with Portugal, but not that far from it. We do have a project which is especially important, which is to struggle to weave to grow, weave to revolutionize, that it has the goal of integrating and implementing women by the textile sector, improving first their qualifications, then the social participation, creating employment networks. The majority, I would say, they were migrant people. So here you can see this project started in 2020, 2021 during COVID in such a way that what we wanted was to generate where a teacher would teach them to sew, and they would spend many hours. That's why this has been followed by some learning for corporate empowerment. This was one of the main goals that they could form in order to continue in the fabric, and that it would be a continuous process. The organization, in cooperation with Lugo, has this process association that is social, that works in an independent manner and cooperative, and above all, it covers the needs for cohesion of migrant people, but especially and above all, women, and in certain collectives that need an inclusion, a social inclusion, because there is some vulnerability. Students, because all of them were women. In the last stage, they were trained in the Castres and the Celtic, actually, the part to in identitary signals of the origin of our province of Lugo, and in terms of companies, in terms of organizations, of photography. Why a synergy on the growth of equality of sustainable development? Well, because this association, what it does is to work with some materials that recycle, not new materials. They do use materials that are recycled. Via this articles, as for example, garments. As you can see, via the fabrics that are being recycled, they design a broad array of items that they can then sell. This is the third stage in our international celebration Ardelucos that I would invite you to visit. They've had a representation which is quite important in some of the locations to begin the selling of their collections, where you can see designs of Castresa culture and other accessories. This is a collection that knows Maria Barros, a designer of international projection, has supported in the design of all these accessories. We are talking about someone, a designer that has worked in fashion and that it's their designer. It's been a tremendous exit. The selling, the economic report that they had, and they keep going. They are in a space that we have in Lugo, that where there are more groups, not of women, but any other kind of economic dynamics participating, trying to pay support with the market, with workshops, interacting with clients that can come from different entrepreneurial realms. The project has been quite successful, and it's been successful in terms of female empowerment, in social inclusion for women that are migrants and that are vulnerable, representing a project which is giving workstation and life quality to these women, and in what we believe, especially in connecting Lugo, and that we bet on so that there is a projection that goes beyond our city, clearly representing a circular economy, insisting on materials that are 98% recycled. All of them are women, and the integration is of 15 people. We are talking about an association of 15 women, 50 entrepreneurs. The city is a bit bigger than this one. We think that they are tremendously happy, and we are very proud of this project that represents that, well, where there's a will, there's a way. I was the last one. If you have any questions, here I am to answer. So if you have any further questions, go ahead and ask away. Thank you.
Muito obrigada, Senhora Vereadora, pela sua presença.
Thank you for being here.
Neste momento, teríamos momento para questões.
This will be the time for Q&A. It's not possible because we have a huge challenge. This panel is now done.
Mais pedido para tentarmos aqui recuperar o atraso no tempo do evento.
So let me ask you this. Let's not have a coffee break, but for those who wish to, you have coffee available on the subject of circular cities. Let me bring on stage, we have our moderator in the territory, in Ruberlink.
Online teremos Marta Prego e Flávio Freitas da Câmara Municipal de Guimarães, da Figueira da Foz, a doutora Paula Pereira.
We have Paula Pereira.
Bom dia, muito obrigada. Pode já sentar-se na mesa. E, portanto, vamos então iniciar o próximo painel.
So let's begin the next panel.
Vamos começar, então, então, só aqui rever as minhas notas, vamos então começar com uma intervenção da doutora Maria José Ifigênio em representação da Direção-Geral.
Let's start with Maria José Ifigênia. You have the floor.
Muito obrigada pelo convite. Quero agradecer à Câmara Municipal do Fundão e à doutora Susana, da Associação Business as Nature, este convite para a Direção-Geral do Território estar presente.
So thank you for having us.
A Direção-Geral do Território é organismo
Territory.
assentado na administração direta do Estado e tem como objetivo
Our goal is to promote the territorial development, working on valuing said territory. Within this scope, we have been responsible for managing the National Initiative of Circular Cities, a program of the Ministry of Environment and Climate Action, funded by the Environmental Fund. So, starting with this definition for circular economy, and also the implementation in terms of the territory for this implementation. This was to contribute to improve the practices of participatory planning for circular economy by 4 networks of circular cities of circular economy within the sphere of local administration, urban and rural organizations, where they considered that urban areas establishing functional relations of complementarity and cooperation between urban areas and peri-urban areas, and with a rustic involvement of things. So making sure there is proximity for food products, transportation, logistics. These are critical places for raising awareness and civic mobilization for the protection and valuing of natural resources, of landscapes and ecosystems. And they are also important for the territory where they are connected to. Urban development and rural development are interdependent, that is integrated and sustainable. In terms of change, there is a participatory definitions incorporating principles of circular economy, as well as the implementation of these principles via innovative solutions of territorial management, namely the sustainable and effective usage of natural resources, development of food systems, and corridors of the provision of fresh regional products, and also the protection of the landscape. The second subject, urban economy for circularity, where within a circular vision of the city, promoting well-being and the improvement of conditions are dissociated, or they intend to be dissociated from the increase of consumption of raw materials and energy. New and old models and technical skills and scientific skills promote the extension of life cycles of products, promote the replacement of goods and services, and also short circuits between production and an intensive usage of things. The impact of devices in mitigating consumption in energy and also in the production of waste. In a perspective of change, circular economy depends on a change of attitudes, a change of behaviors of citizens, and mobilizing communities, inducing social synergies and cooperative processes, co-creative and locally based, making cities a living laboratory and testing innovative solutions closer to citizens that are properly positioned to understand public needs and to coordinate approaches integrated in different sectors and economic agents on different scales on a territorial basis. One other thing is the urban cycle of water in a circular vision of the city with the structuring vision of territorial planning and urban definition, making sure that there is safety, quality, and the universal view of replacement. And we do have some echo. We do apologize, we are getting some echo, which is now solved, pertaining climate change and extreme meteorological phenomena that we heard being discussed today. Cities must improve the way that they consider water in planning and in managing the territory in such a way that there might be a sustainable usage of water that is also a proper quality, and also promoting adaptation to climate change, keeping the focus in improving the efficiency in the usage of water and promoting the reusage, recycling of residual water, which is a very important item in managing the water cycle. Last thing, within a circular vision of the city, the buildings and urban areas are the resources that are available with an economic and social value, and rehabilitation is seen as a privileged manner of intervention in the city and urban development. Within a perspective of change, cities must define strategies for planning and innovative manners of managing urbanism so that public spaces and infrastructures are properly managed, thereby including actions of urban rehabilitation, promoting the usage of buildings, abandoned areas, and the qualifications of the public space and urban devices. Resources to do new logics of public services and also collective areas. It's also very important to have a smart management of construction waste by using innovative solutions. This has not excluded the consideration of other subjects that have been considered in terms of decarbonization, public procurement, digital transition, equity, and social inclusion. 28 municipalities were involved in Steel, Madeira, and we had municipalities with different localization, north, south, center, the coast, and also municipalities with different dimensions. 8 municipalities each. At the end of 2023, with the main results of the production of 32 local plans of integrated actions to promote the transition into a circular economy. This is the result of a cooperative process in each municipality with its communities within the scope of groups, which was the groups for planning and local action, counting with the involvement and participation of representatives of relevant local authors, according to the subjects that have been approached. Different levels of public administration have been included, such as the regional coordination committees. These cannot be developed without the population. In each municipality, we have been identifying local challenges and also the strategies that could provide an answer to those challenges. They were then brought to local plans of integrated action. Those 32 plans have accounted more than 200 actions. Considering the goal that has been defined by the Pink Circle cities, creating favorable conditions to entrepreneurship and female employment in circular economy of low carbon, we've identified common points that it's important to develop as such as that we are expecting a second edition of circular economies that the DG territory intends to launch before the end of the year. The linear model in terms of production and usage of products with a great quantity of waste and pollution results in the destruction of ecosystems that we depend on. This is a speech that we are aware of. The UN says that the future of the humanity depends on healthy ecosystem. So there is still a path of destruction of ecosystems. To be within the limits of the planet, we need to redesign our economy based on circular principles. Cities, villages, municipalities are main actors in said transformation. How do we have innovation? How we have entrepreneurship? Circular economy does not follow conventional goals, but long-term benefit and distributed them in an egalitarian manner throughout society. What are the benefits that we can identify? What benefits can we reach? Let's hear some local actors that have been directly connected to the networks of circular cities that will address their experience of the challenges that they've been faced, of the goals that they wish to reach, and what kind of benefits will they be able to identify with implementation of their projects. Those who participate in this panel have been partners. These are municipalities with a lot of experience in subjects that have to do with sustainability, developing intensive work with many examples of best practices that are quite inspiring for us. I don't know if Fundão goes first. Thank you to Fundão and on what's been the work developed in circular cities. Thank you. Good morning. It's been a long morning, so I decided to change my presentation. I have a short video to present by the municipality of Fundão. It's a network integrated by 8 municipalities. Just as a preliminary remark, a word of acknowledge for the DG territory for how bold they were. It's a program that we miss a lot because they have created strong connections between municipalities, and many of the results go beyond the work itself. We have many municipalities that started working in some European projects as a result of the cooperative work that has been developed. So here's a short video. I just need sound.
Principalmente circular. E se no passado circundamos o mundo, hoje unimos cidades em torno de objetivos de impacto planetário.
Sem som não vai funcionar.
Desafios a criar relações.
Obrigado. Eu resolvi usar este vídeo no início, agora são os breves
I
comentários.
decided to use this video in the beginning, just 1 or 2 minutes. It was an amazing experience to be part of this network. We have not had the opportunity to participate in the set of national and European projects, but this project was actually very important because of what has allowed to create that goes beyond the project, talking about this 8 action plans in each municipality. And we have this definition that has been defined and designed cooperative by a diversified set of actions within the scope of our network's more than 100 entities in putting together these programs. So these are programs that represent a lot of what are the expectations and the ambitions of communities. We had access to get to know best practices throughout the territory. We got to know that we can do bricks from cigarette butts, or had the opportunity to see how in Câmara de Loja you can have agriculture in such a difficult area to access, or to check that in Ramos de Monsaraz there is the only restaurant that has a red Michelin star. There is a green one also, and they are the ones that have the circularity part, that this network, and this is a personal opinion, of course, that colleagues from the network do agree, this project launched by the DG territory represents a paradigm shift that we should strengthen in Portugal. We are focused on competing for everything, access to ideas, access to funding. When we have a challenge, we befall the temptation of be a bit arrogant, thinking that we can create new things for problems, but there are solutions for many of our challenges, and we must have access to those best practices and mechanisms, namely funding, to replicate best practices. And there is a paradigm that is meant for everyone. I had some slides on the municipality of Fundão in other networks that will allow us to fulfill this mission for 2020 and 2030 to have a sustainable, smart, inclusive area. But smart territory sustainability is the fact that we have this PLR for the presentation to the UN, some agency and European projects that we are participating, and because we are the European capital of inclusion for what we are doing in terms of including people from different origins. Thank you and have a great, great day.
Muito obrigada.
Thank you.
Agora, à
Let's now go to Guimarães Experience. We have online the Chief of Division of Economic Development, Marta Mota Prego, and also to Flávio Freitas, to present the project BasN.
Boa tarde, agradecer o convite.
Thank you for having me.
Boa tarde a todos. Antes de mais, só agradecer também a participação do município de Guimarães, que está muito bem representado.
Let's thank Guimarães for being here. The architect will present BasN. Let me give the floor to the architect to present the project. Once again, to bring back to what Ricardo said, it was a pleasure to be part of this network. The wheel has already been invented. We must learn from and with each other. It's a healthy competition to do the best things we have been doing with such evolved municipalities in different issues. Good afternoon. Once again, thank you for having us and to be part of this Pink Circle network. Ricardo has presented. It's been a pleasure. We would like to replicate and to continue with this sharing. The organization of the event. Allow me to present a project of cooperation with some members of local action. I was surprised because many of its assumptions have been presented by the speaker from Lugo, which is a BasN project. Allow me to share my screen, and I do apologize, but the sound from the speaker is not the greatest. We will do the best I can, but it's actually not that easy to follow the speech on account of sound quality or lack thereof.
Conseguem ver o meu ecrã? Não sei se alguém pode responder, porque eu não estou a ver. Sim? Muito bem. Pronto, o projeto BasN.
The BasN project, it's a project that is to provide an answer to some of the challenges in terms of employability and also focusing on female employability. We don't have a lot of time, but I would like to invite you to visit us. Guimarães is an industrial territory focusing on the textile industry, and if on the one hand there is a lack of human resources in this field, in this activity, on the other, in terms of unemployment, there is an age tier which is a bit trickier. So, there is a problem of unemployment following many years within the same company, but that then create a certain misorientation which leads us to a problem which is long time unemployment. There's a local, regional, national problem that has to do with high waste in this area. We have European standards that we have to fulfill, but as a municipality, we must promote political actions to solve this problem and that minimize this impact on the environment. At the same time, awareness raising. in terms of acquiring sustainable, responsible problems. This was the starting point for a project with a set of entities, namely the city of Guimarães, the Portuguese Red Cross, the Training Center Modatex, and the Institute for Employment and Vocational Training. The funding by the initiative Portugal Inovação Social, so that we could start up with the necessary conditions, focusing on the development. So we wish to envelop the technical parts in terms of the 45. Most people that we have here is in 50-something years aged here. In terms that are essentially women, and why this definition of the IFP in terms of posture, but they had to someone be connected because that would be the time to do it. I just realized that the presentation is not working, so I don't know how to solve this.
Os slides terá que passar desse lado, não está a conseguir. Tente projetar novamente para ver se... Sim, fazer uma nova comparação. Já estamos a ver os slides.
Passou?
Sim, agora sim, mano.
Agora estão a passar, não está em modo de apresentação, mas estamos a ver...
Aqui está em modo de apresentação.
We are just experiencing some technical difficulties pertaining the PowerPoint presentation. We will resume as soon as we have it working.
Por isso, F5, certo?
Estamos a ver novamente a apresentação, agora F5 para projetar.
Já pus F5, está a passar?
Não está. Mas se calhar sugeria para abreviarmos passarem... Ok, passou agora, está no slide parceiros.
Eu se coloco em modo de apresentação é que eu não consigo, não é?
Então, se calhar eu sugeria apresentar assim. Não fica tão bonito, mas para o efeito conseguimos ver.
Eu acho que sim. Estava aqui a tentar ser sucinta e depois acabei por me perder aqui num detalhe técnico. Pronto, como eu dizia, efetivamente o nosso foco...
As I was saying, our focus is not necessary to get people that have some relationship with textile. And then the issue of circularity in terms of raw material. Our goal would be to use the local base, not just human resources, but also the waste of the industry itself, the local industry, to decrease our ecological footprint. And at the same time, and creative entrepreneurship was to provide an answer to the new trends, promoting entrepreneurship associated to the project. We are witnessing a new paradigm on mitigating the industry itself. A production that's not massive, but focusing on this empowerment in the sense of providing that answer. So, how did this operationalize? Well, the municipality, the Red Cross, and a team of consultants was there. which was a proximity to local companies, serving, mapping the needs and the profile that were needed, and that we had the opportunity of employment. And at the same time, alongside these companies, to identify what kind of raw material we have, not just in terms of textile, but also items that are finished, but then because of excess stock, we're not working in companies, so it's an upcycling of these products. And then the issue of product design. From the top, this has been a point that we truly wanted to value in the production and the end product of the, because this is what we wanted, was to create a product for a certain item of consumption being a business model of the project. So it's an initial stage for funding that has allowed to get this next stage, which was to create training. In the next stage, we would not obviously go to that funding because the product and its placement in the market will be what makes sure that we have the continuity of the project. And then beneficiaries and the important role of the IFP and mother tax in being able within these people to understand what would be the profile of people to survey with a selection process via an in-person interview. Implementation of project that Mother Tax has, creating products, as I mentioned, and also something that it's focused on the packaging, on this plan that has been created, and then to create also via other partnerships, places for the selling products, and then connected to employability, the issue of being able to match between the capacity building of these trainees and the needs of the companies that ended up creating this employment, not just of opportunities, but something else that we wanted to incentivize, which was to employ these ladies, reconciling family life with personal life, because sometimes they cannot have a schedule from 9 to 5 or 9 to 6, but within the comfort of their home, they can provide some services to the community. I do apologize if you could keep it short because we really need to finish. Okay, it's important to highlight the context of labor with a focus on circular economy and the great goal, which is the integration of these women in the labor market. One other important factor that I would like to highlight is local agents and cooperative work that has been analyzed. Sourcing was based on local companies. Product design was focused on the partnership that we did with the students of product design from the University of Minho. Ambassadors of the project also. It would not be possible with a strong connection to the territory. The most important thing of all is that to date, the impact that we did is 172 people that have been impacted by this initiative. Here are my contact information if you have any questions. Do not hesitate.
Muito obrigada, doutora Marta, e pedimos desculpa pelo tempo breve que teve para a intervenção e passamos desde já para
Thank you. Allow us to give the floor to the city of Figueira da Foz. Paula Pereira, thank you for being with us. I'm the last one. I hope that I can convey what I'm about to present. Huge pleasure to be here. A special thank you to the organizing committee and to the city of Fundão. That's where I'm from. This is where my heart belongs. Very happy to be here. Thank you for having me again. And I've been living in Figueira da Foz for more than 20 years. Let me share a video of the network we tendered to the DG territory with the subject Circular Net, connected to circular cities. We've worked with 7 municipalities. We were the leaders of the project. And the intention was to think that we cannot work alone. It's important to share experiences. It's important to share knowledge. So we've created a group with 8 municipalities, north to south, in 8 local action plans. And specifically, we went towards the area of waste. We are experiencing some technical difficulties. Okay, 2030, that leads us to implement some measures in the fulfillment of the transition into a circular economy, namely in the field of collection and bio-waste. The municipality of Figueira has started to work in that field, namely with installation of community composters. And a few years ago, it has allowed to sell some domestic composters also to the population. But since the beginning of the year, we have been providing them for free. We were able to offer 200, and the goal is in September to begin selective collection on proximity of bio-waste. We must start working on this in terms of transforming them into a proper and reusing waste, which is quite important. Let me just show you the video.
Estava agora a ver aqui com a equipa técnica, não vai ser possível passar o vídeo mesmo por questões técnicas. Pedimos imensa desculpa, sim.
It's not possible to show the video because of technical difficulties. Circular Net was to transform cities by circular economy in terms of waste, changing patterns of consumption, using dynamic elements for an energy transition and valuing the environmental impact.
Vou passar bocadinho à frente, porque realmente já estamos. Queria falar bocadinho mais dos objetivos da rede.
I would like to discuss the goals of the network, promoting structures that foster the participation and cooperation for an urban economy, for circularity, transfer and sharing knowledge, integrating digital tools that allow to work on the assessment of circular economy. These were 3 subjects: energy transition, talking about the goals of Figueira da Foz. We've discussed our projects. From the beginning of the year, we've promoted awareness actions in all schools so that we could implement composting system and with the community. And then we have construction and demolition. We have an advantage, a clear advantage for many years with the delivery of big bags to collect up to 1 cubic meter. For small works that don't need licensing, people can have a big bag, they go to the local authority, they ask for it, the collection with the city, and this project was an attempt to deter waste that are still coming about in the municipality and to transform into an asset. There's something that it's advantageous. There is a company working, which is RCDs, and it is within that scope that we want to show the municipalities for the proper separation of this waste. The video showed all the actions that we had in the municipalities and some examples of best practices. One of the images was how this works and of the waste that we have in Figueira da Foz. It's a very nice example. In terms of the center region, it's actually an asset. These are the challenges of the municipalities that we've worked with, Guarda and etc. I can share the video later, no problem, and the slides. I won't be focusing on each challenge. In a nutshell, we've worked on bio-waste, selective collection, sustainable mobility. We also wish to implement measures, not just of bio-waste, but also systems that assess the quantity of waste in containers, that have citizens using containers in a very sustainable and aware-like manner, and another kind of waste. Examples of some municipalities where they use cigarette ends for interesting products. I would love to show the video. Unfortunately, we cannot see it now, but we can share it later. And we do work with SDG 12, has to do with production, with sustainable consumption and production, taking into account the goals so that we have up to 2030. The methodology used within this network has been quite interesting, but new to us. That allows the exchange of experiences, of sharing not just with municipalities, but with local partners. It was quite enriching and sharing experiences. I think that was the main thing. And the plans themselves, each municipality has a plan, and it is interesting to continue to this. So these experiences of knowledge, it's very important. I would like to thank you all. Thank you. Next panel, we do apologize for not having Q&A as expected, but we are actually almost on time. Let's now go to the presentation of the Pink Circle, and we have Susana Vizil, the founder of the Business as Nature, and also for climate transition, amongst others. Pleasure to be here. Thank you to all of those who took part in this event. And in this morning, it's not easy to cram such, so many speakers in such a small schedule. We do count with the support of all of you, especially the team who helped to put this together, the amazing team of Business as Nature, but especially to the team of Fundão that once again shows why this municipality in the hinterland that I've known for many years, because I'm from Serra da Estrela, it is today a municipality that leads and is an example of best practices in many areas of the sustainable development. For those who are not aware of us, let me tell you what Business as Nature is. It's an NGO created 5 years ago by a group of people. We are not a women's organization, we are an organization for all, but with a mission of including women for sustainability. Why women? Many times they ask, why this focus specifically? I'm not a feminist, but I do recognize, and we all recognize, the importance of the role of women in our communities and the delay in terms of an effective equality of opportunity between men and women in the planet, but also in our country. We must never forget that, as the Secretary General for the UN says, at this rhythm, it will take more than 200 years to reach gender equality. It's not solved yet. It's not a given. We are more than half of the population. We have a very relevant role in the communities, assistance to families, making sure intergenerations, to make sure that in many of the countries there is access to water and food. And we are also caretakers. We are resilient. We preserve peace. The Secretary General of the UN often states that if we had more countries led by women, it would prevent a lot of wars, because a mother would never send their kids to war, their sons to war. On average, there are a set of traits that throughout the evolution of the species, we do have the role of caregiver for those who are at the community. Despite the importance of women in society, which is obviously recognized, we continue, and they have presented this data, we continue to have lower wages in Europe, 15% on average for women. We have less access to positions of leadership. Also, recently, we did a negotiation and diplomacy course for Portuguese-speaking women in partnership with the Harvard University, where, in fact, with SME Intersec, which is also here with us, and so that we could increase the participation of women. Typically, in COPs and Business as Nature has been the only Portuguese NGO to have side events organized by us in the conferences of the UN since we were created, water, different COPs, Conference of the Oceans, etc. In that, from the first days of the high-level forum in more than 170 countries, we have typically 8 women representing the high-level institutions. big political decisions that affect us all are still being made by just one part of society, which are essentially men above 60, representing the countries. We cannot have policies that are representative of society. And we continue to be discriminated with figures that are unacceptable, and we are the most affected by crisis, by all kinds of crises when there are situations of unemployment, social instability. Women are the first to be affected. Climate crisis is no exception. Hence the movement of Women for Climate, from Portuguese-speaking countries to the world, created in September 2022, that wishes to lead by example. From this experience of ours, and it's not just in Portugal, but I would say that throughout the world, we do have a lot of plans, strategies, and policies. Many of them are amazing, properly defined, but we are not that agile in terms of implementing, making it happen actually. Business has nature, and what we are throughout these 5 years, and those who know us know how things work, it is to make it happen, many times without the resources, financial resources. We do have many others, mobilizing partners, mobilizing those who believe in our mission, being able to make it happen, many things with not a lot of resources. And for those who can follow our activity, you will see that I have one person full-time in my team, in this organization, and what we're able to implement with these resources, many times we are surprised. The manifest has 6 pillars: politics, diplomacy, and climate activism, empowerment, capacity building, sustainable entrepreneurship, science, technology, and knowledge, dissemination, communication, participation, and cooperation, and creation of networks. Portugal doesn't have a lot of tradition in terms of cooperating, of working as a team. I think we have been improving, but there is still a long way to go, and we can do a lot if we can create synergies and work together, forgetting about individual egos, serving the population. This movement has an action plan up to 2026 with 12 initiatives that I would invite you to get to know. And within these initiatives, we do have the network of cities and pink circle entrepreneurs that we find here. The context of these cities has been discussed broadly, and we don't want to replace other networks. I fully agree with what Ricardo said. It makes no sense. The goal is not to compete with what exists. It is to aggregate and being able to add value to what exists, especially in bringing women firsthand for the implementation of projects. Because if we wish to change consumption habits, lifestyles, and according to the WHT, women make the majority of decisions. And we will not be able to implement the SDGs without this. We were talking about the World Trade Organization, of course, before. Well, this has to do with territories of lower density, but also in different regions, unemployment rates above in women and low rates of self-employment. And when it exists, many times the projects are of low added value. There are, in fact, less opportunities for entrepreneurship and employment for women, and lower access to global markets. And I think that this is a bit, rhetorical, like what we did in Ovar with women from the fishing community to participate in our actions. It's been quite hard. I had to go to the neighborhood of fishermen to talk to women, to bring them into our workshops. This was workshops of upcycling, of marine plastics, and many said, well, I can't, because my husband doesn't find this right. And even during the weekend, he needs to make lunch for family. And we discuss in the hinterland, in certain villages, that we present the projects and initiatives, and women need to make a presentation, a pitch, and many times, and the gentleman asks, what's a pitch? What does she have to do? And this is not as easy for women to be entrepreneurs and to be at the forefront of what is their self-determination. This project contributes for the development of cities in the different scopes that we have been discussing, and the end beneficiaries are women that are unemployed, that wish to develop their business, entrepreneurs, municipal teams that will be involved, and the users of cities. This initiative, Pink Circle, within its scope of acting, it has 3 pillars: resilient cities, where we wish to involve the issues of adaptation to climate change, the issues of regeneration and biodiversity, healthy nutrition. Then we have the pillars of circular and efficient cities, where we intend to approach the usage of resources, smart cities, short supply chains, creating incubators or accelerators of circular business and low carbon, essentially for entrepreneurs, creating shopping malls, eco-centers of new generations. And this pillar of inclusive cities that promote gender equality and female empowerment, promoting employment, green jobs, specifically of women, of leadership with its focus on sustainability, with planning cities, thinking about this gender perspective, as we've had some examples this morning. This is where we get these pink circle cities, and we had 4 stages. The first one is the one that we're here, creating pink circle specificities, defining the criteria according to which this flag will be attributed, almost like a blue one, but in this case it's a pink one for cities that implement these policies of entrepreneurship in the fields of sustainability. This is in the field in terms of development, entrepreneurship, and the circular business, as we've seen examples in the field of textile, in different realms of implementation of this business with women. The third one is to define the action plan of Pink Circle and implementing it. And the fourth one is the granting of this recognition, the so-called flag to the city, and the monitoring of the performance via the definition of indicators and following up the implementation of this action plan. In this first stage, the one that we are at now, we will formalize the advisory board. It is already formal, and we will present it next. We've created this project, launching the network in Fundão. Then, from there on, with the representatives of each city and with the advisory board, we will develop this specification, defining criteria. We will start this afternoon with the afternoon's workshop, where we will idealize the city of the future. If we think about things for a few minutes, what is the city that we wish to have and that we feel is our city in 2050? Let's work on it so that we can define that criteria that represent the city of the future, creating a supporting handbook for circular businesses. And in April 2025, we will hold a new conference with a presentation of this specification, with a presentation of this team formed by municipalities and an advisory board, where we will bring other cities.
Nesta primeira fase da constituição da rede, portanto, é aquilo que vos falei, eu só vos vou aprofundar que no desenvolvimento da especificação, nesta tal definição...
Developing this definition, we will have online meetings with focal points of each municipality and also a workshop with the advisory board, not just for them to get to know in person, but to be together debating about this subject. And then we will have a workshop on deepening cities with the representatives of cities and with the advisory board. In the second stage, we will identify potential circular businesses in each municipality, selecting participants in the empowerment or capacity building project, creating a sustainable business into a program of mentoring for business development, the assessment of those businesses, pitching them to a Shark Tank group of potential investors or partners that might support the implementation of said projects, creating or adapting, in the case of municipalities with incubators or accelerators, to specifically support this kind of businesses, especially to welcome these women, then to create companies and to implement circular business and the dissemination of the initiative and products and services. This presentation will become available to all of you, but because we're out of time, you might, with greater detail, to understand what we will do in each one of these items. For example, in terms of capacity building, we will have a startup creation workshop of reconciliation of family work balance, role model women who might present what they truly make and do to inspire others, motivational workshops for mentoring, for business development, to define business plan, marketing and communication, and also to develop the prototype of the product and service. We will then assess projects, as I said before, and creating companies. In terms of dissemination of the initiative, we will create the website of the project, and we will try to do some conference cycles, developing a circular outlet of sustainable products, kind of a circular shopping mall in eco-centers, being able to take advantage of new generation eco-centers and to be able to develop a digital marketplace for the promotion of the products of these entrepreneurs. The advantages of creating this network are very, very, very different. They are almost inherent to what I was discussing, not just promoting employment, creating incubators, connecting the different pillars of adaptation, of resilience and regeneration, regenerative cities, of all these components, but also bringing women into the forefront so that we can involve communities. We also have our pilot cities. We have a network with representatives in the different Portuguese-speaking countries. A special thank you to UCLA and the Secretary General, not just for being here, but for the support that you've been given in the involvement and contact with these Portuguese-speaking cities, highlighting Florianópolis, Barra do Dande, Ribeira Grande, Santiago. They've been with us in another panel, Santo Antônio do Príncipe. So a set of cities, nationally and internationally. Some of them are confirmed, the others are on stage, have been confirmed. So in a month, we hope to have these 30 cities properly confirmed as part of this pilot network. And also cities with very different traits, urban, rural, peri-rural, in terms of development that are different, with different problems. European cities with a lot of good practices, and we think that this sharing is quite important because the criteria and specificities are not just for European cities or with a given vision of a given paradigm of development. This is quite important because one of the gaps in terms of global policies in the field of climate and biodiversity is to look into the world in terms of the global north. So we want to bring the South with the action in Europe of those countries that are developed. And it's very important to bring different speed so that this network can represent it. Let me present the advisory board. Let me bring the president of the advisory board, Jorge Cristino. He gives us the honor of presiding the advisory board. Please do present the other people who are part of the advisory board. Good morning. Allow me to greet the mayor for welcoming us. A year ago, when Susana Vizeu told me about the project, recognizing the passion that I had for sustainable development and for decarbonization, both of them immediately we have agreed that this project had to start in Fundão. So this was something that we got automatically for the recognition and the award that you've got as European Capital of Inclusive Cities. So thank you for having us, but congratulations for what you have been doing. To greet Mr. Secretary of State of Local Development and Urban Planning, and also to tell you that you do have an important role being a local politician. You know how important the territory is. And also, obviously, to greet the Secretary of State of UCLA, telling him that not just how important it is to have this network of cities, including a project such as this one. Let me greet Business as Nature. And although I'm a member of the association, it's very important to say that Business as Nature, amongst many other NGOs that work on gender equality and also the issue of sustainable development, to say that this is the main association, not just national, but also in terms of the CPLP, that combines both subjects and that brings the issue of climate change to promote gender equality. This is very important. That's why Susana and Business as Nature itself came to be recognized internationally by the CPLP. I'm here to present the advisory board. I'm very honored of being the president of it, also invited by Susana. And from the start, we have Ana Matos. She's the head of communication of Eletrão, hereby representing Eletrão. With Land Fund. In terms of communication and environment. Cristina Carrola, she's here with us. She's a member of the Portuguese Environment Agency. Domingos Vasconcelos, architect. Gil Penha Lopes, living systems design, nature-based. Inês Costa, consultant in sustainability at SHE and circular economy. Isabel Ferreira, coordinator of the Polytechnic of Bragança and an MP. Isabel Neves, the president of the Business Angels of Lisbon Club. João Ferrão, researcher and coordinator of the Social Sciences of Lisbon. Luisa Schmidt, researcher and coordinator of the same institution. Maria José Ifigênio, she's with us, hereby representing the DG territory. Mônica Ferro, she's a director of the Fund of Populations from the UN. She was also a speaker. Patrícia Corim, she's a coordinator of sustainability and mobility of ADEN, hereby representing ADEN. And to the territory, in terms those for the waste of the Northeast, Paulo Ferrão. Also the 100 systems, Paulo Lemos in circular economy, Pedro Matos Soares, a researcher from the Sciences University of Lisbon for the Adaptation 2000, and Sara Moreno Pires, she's the president of the Câmara House and the professor of the University of Aveiro. Well, this is the advisory board. As you can see, it is an honor. And within the process of it still being built, there are more invites that have been sent that we are waiting for an answer. And with this amazing panel, we will be able to go beyond. Let me also tell you that so far in the project that has been presented by Susana Viseu, it is a project that has to do with the volunteer work. So it's also in the beginning, but of a tender for funding. It is important to have that leverage. So thank you. So let's go to the closing ceremony. Let's go to the closing ceremony. We have online Sara Rautio, member of the Municipal Council of Melina and from the Committee of Regions. She's with us online.
Yes, here I am. Can you hear me?
Oh, thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we do.
Perhaps.
We can
Okay.
hear you. We can hear you. Yes.
Okay, sorry,
We
I
can
didn't.
hear you.
Okay, sorry,
We
I
can
didn't.
hear you.
Okay, great. Okay, great. So happy to be here, and greetings from Vilnius, Lithuania, where I'm at the moment. And first of all, congratulations for this great Pink Circle idea. And I definitely greet this with a big enthusiasm. Coming from Finland, and as a politician and also female entrepreneur, I think it's so crucial and important how we are working together in this issue. First of all, congratulations for the Inclusion and Diversity Prize for the city. I totally think that it's really important that we raise the issue also in this way. We know that the enterprises led by women are good for the future and for sustainable development, and as you've seen it already happen. And therefore, I think there's an urgency to foster measures which facilitate access to finance and also to products and services that do support women's entrepreneurship. Access to finance plays a significant role beyond the support provided at the very early phases of enterprise growth. And since we have the problem that women are not so well yet presented in enterprises, so I think we definitely need this positive discrimination for women-led enterprises. And we definitely have to, as I already mentioned, raise awareness on the issue. Of course, obviously, the local and regional authorities are crucial players in the transition to the circular economy, in building ecosystems with different stakeholders, such as universities and other players in the region. And we also understand that the underrepresentation of women in the enterprise sphere, since it's only less than 30% of all entrepreneurs, there's a significant impact that we need gender-specific training and support to increase the number of female entrepreneurs. And also, and we need a large variety of this positive discrimination for the women entrepreneurs, and also women who perhaps haven't been thinking yet of starting an enterprise themselves. And we think that, and I strongly agree that we need women's contribution to green economy activities. It's essential to have these equitable, sustainable development, and it should be as the value itself, and it should be valued. Women and girls can also benefit from the opportunities in the field of green entrepreneurship. And so I just want to sum up that the European Union must be a leader and visible champion in the implementation of the SDGs in all governmental levels. We need mentoring and learning from each other, and we have to support each other, and so we can raise up the Pink Circle all around Europe. And I'm happy to say that my neighboring city, Tampere, is involved in this very first circle. So all the best, and thank you, and I congratulate you. Let's work together for better future. Thank you.
Passamos agora à próxima
Let us now give the floor to the next speaker, the Secretary General of UCLA, Vitor Ramalho. Thank you. Very shortly, let me greet the Mayor, Paulo Fernandes. Is a reference for all of us, this has been said. Also the Secretary of State, he's not here, but my greetings to him. Oh! I do apologize. Okay. Mr. Secretary of State and the Mayor, Susana Viseu, who was kind enough to invite me. And all the speakers with whom we've learned a lot. Just some short remarks to tell you this. At UCLA, it's the oldest organization with the goal of deepening the relationships with cities of the Portuguese-speaking countries, created in 1985 by the mayor of Lisbon, with 66 cities and around 20 companies who support it. There was no more timely opportunity to have this in Fundão. Why? Well, we are at a planet which is the only one where we can live, so far, that we know of, right? So in the last 40 years, we've witnessed amazing changes. These changes brought amazing changes. When the world was bipolar, regardless of what we thought, we were aware that it was predictable, regardless of the greatest powers, which is the United States of America and the former Soviet Union. That world is no more. So this is a world that brought amazing changes in globalization, with new technologies that go across all of us, especially with the social media. This was the only side that had military economic conditions in terms of generalization of defending democracy as a proper regime for the solution of problems of people. And all dictatorships, left or right, made sure that there is the unavoidability of free elections. That doesn't exist anymore. We are living at a multipolar world, and we cannot do like the ladies that are pregnant, where you can put a device to see if it's a boy or a girl. We cannot access what's being born, but we can understand that it is a world that starts to define a multipolar definition. Let me talk about this quickly, because this provides different definitions on a planetary basis. We have a fertility in women below 2 children per woman, but in Africa we have 5 to 7, which means that this brings us into a different reality, where the demographic development is much higher than the economic one. And so, apparently, there's a lot more people in terms of division getting a lot less than what is being made. And this raises very delicate issues, worsened by the fact that the influence of certain religions, ecumenic religions, especially radical Islamism, has disturbances on that level, because gender equality is not protected as we would like in Europe. So we must face this issue of providing an answer in terms of challenges, in terms of 3 levels, in a different manner according to the continent where we are. On the other hand, we must bear in mind that wars in Africa, specifically after the beginning of the independence, and in some cases with the exaggeration of classical wars, we came to realize that cities have been absorbed, or they have absorbed, internal populations as a result of the conflict itself. And today, Luanda, which was a city that had 500,000 inhabitants, has 10 million today. So the problems that we see in this city, it's the same that we see in Maputo, whose populational density grew exponentially. This means that cities, these two cities, are an example of what's happening in Africa, but they are also an example of what's happening worldwide. The cities that we see as being the most populous in the world are growing in the ranking of those who are being presented as the biggest cities in the world. If we are aware that 70% of cities, 70% of the population in 2050 will live in cities, this will account for the answers that we must provide. That's why this is extraordinarily important. On the one hand, to be aware of the content that we have, of what we must do in terms of prevention and providing an answer in terms of resilience, of circularity, but also to carry this to cities themselves, which are 70% of the population who will live in it in a few years in 2050. The challenges that this entails are different from continent to continent. The African continent, for example, Latin America, in Asia, China is not the country with the more population in the world, it's India. And we must be aware that the Portuguese language is the fourth most spoken in the world, or the fifth for some. That reality will actually be strengthened because Angola at the end of the century will be the most populated country of the Portuguese language. Then it's Mozambique, and then it's Brazil. Because Brazil is in population and because of the fertility rate it has of women, which is quite low, below 2, similar to Europe, while in Africa that does not happen. One last thing is that while we have an aging population with answers that our dear friend Susanna has mentioned, according to the answers given to youth, I would like to highlight that in Africa, more than half of the population is below 20. The majority of the population in Africa is below 19 years of age. So there is a lack of conformity between this need to provide an answer to the future and the capacity of the country itself, but also at the same time, the need for youth to provide an answer to the productive system. And there is a huge contradiction here. The challenges are huge. Altogether, we might create contribution for these answers because they are of national design, nothing to do with parties, they go beyond parties. It's just like sovereign functions of the state that are debated as justice. It's a sovereign function of the state, respecting everyone. Same thing in terms of safety, same thing in terms of external policy, and more, we must gather efforts, all people, for these goals to be fulfilled. So, Susanna, thank you for having me. I've been with you in many initiatives. I hope to continue to participate with your contribution and your persistence and determination. Thank you all. And I hope that the workshop of the afternoon, it's very successful. Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Secretary General. Last presentation, and to close the event, we have the honor of having the Secretary of State of Local Administration and Territory Planning, Hernani Dias, to whom I would like to give the floor. Okay, good morning. Let me greet the Mayor of Fundão. and my deep recognition for the quality of what you have been developing in your municipality. I'm sure that you are of great reference to all of us. So this is a source of inspiration for some products that we have been developing, and that some of them there was a proper relationship with the city of Fundão. Also, a proper example of the presence of someone who has political responsibilities, showing that actually today women are properly positioned in some matters, some areas of collective life. Dear Chairman of the Municipal Assembly, thank you for having me. Madam President of Business as Nature, dear Secretary of UCLA, we're discussing an issue that is particularly different in terms of realizing exactly the creation of a network that has a focus on women. And this is great because many of the things are known, but let me say this. The municipalities have a huge responsibility in giving it the development of some project, be it connected with the sector and other areas of activity. Specifically, being a network of cities, it makes a whole lot of sense that our representatives who have a huge vision of development for the future, and because we are all worried about climate change, about what could be the nefarious effects of this situation, it's important that together we can take care of this, making it that capacity of entrepreneurship that have this mission. We talk about cities on the need to address approaches and to involve women that are directly connected to the rural area. It's important to do it also. We know there is a lot of entrepreneurs, there's a lot of people giving a contribution to fight climate change. And if we think that within our country there is in fact a huge potential, I don't know if I'm getting this wrong because I wasn't able to follow everything, but here's a suggestion. Let's bring our women from rural areas into this project. There is a set of wills and also a joining of efforts that must be connected, and so that the end result is as best as possible. I think that what we are doing, similarly to other areas, it is quite relevant to reach the goals that we wanted to reach, as I had the opportunity to hear. I truly hope that this network is as successful as it deserves, the success that we ambition it to have, because it's also necessary, it's very necessary, and that we are all capable of making a positive assessment, measuring the contribution that was given from today up to the involvement of surely other cities of the country and throughout the world. I work directly with local administration, If I could help, namely in terms of awareness raising for our representatives, I will do it with pleasure, and I will be able to provide an answer to everything that you deem necessary. All the best. I hope you have great work and that you all feel comfortable and happy in this work and initiative that belongs to us all. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Secretary of State, for being with us. Thank you all. We will start for lunch, and please join us for the afternoon's workshop to work on the different dimensions of the criteria of the pink circle cities. Thank you, and see you soon.
Olá. Ah, certo. O problema é que... sim. Já agora esqueci-me de dizer, obrigada pelo alerta, Gil, que retomaria...
We shall reconvene at 2:30. Thank you.